Welcome back to the Shadow of the Colossus. Wander, wake up!
Wander, wake up, Chrono. Oh wait, wrong game.
So yeah, whenever you save the game at a save point, it counts as a good night's sleep for Wander, so that's a nice touch.
Was this how it was
That's
in the
nice,
original
but
game?
time is on the
Yes.
essence.
Yes, it was.
Nice touch either way.
Way the sun, you mean? But yeah.
Eh.
Way the...
And he said either, actually, he said either way.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. I said nice touch either way.
Oh, never mind. I misunderstood what you said. Ignore me.
Anyway, in case you're wondering, yes, there are also other stats.
Basically,
like
Teo,
that
as you can
in the
see, that's
overworld,
his default
if you need
poncho, right? However, you can put in the Cloak of Fate, and just like the Live Sword, which is also what I have equipped right now, it oh, here's another interesting thing. This is one that I just did, climbing to the horse for the back. You couldn't do that in the original game, so that's another. And whenever you have to get up on Agro's back on a hurry, especially when you're doing a time trial challenge, trust me, being able to get from the horse from other directions aside from the sideways becomes makes the time trials a lot less frustrating than the original version.
One of the things that I never bothered to try, that also were in the original, but I'm pretty sure they're also back here, is having Wander perform tricks with aggro. Because the game and the trophies for the PS3 version say possible, but I actually never tried because...
They're very
looks like
simple to do, honestly.
Oh, okay. The only one major I know is that Wander can stay still on top of aggro, like proper standing still instead of just.
It's trophies aside. There's no real use for it. It's just for the sake of coolness.
There you go. This is the game telling you where you're going. Yeah, this is the game telling you you're going to the right direction.
Okay, then let's go. So, according to Dorman, the second Colossus should be somewhere at the bottom of this ravine. So let's see.
Yep.
Fun fact, if you do know what you're doing, however, I'm not going to do it because I want to show what's the default way of playing. Because if you know what you're doing, you can jump into the rocks for that wall I just passed through and have the boss battle trigger, and you can just jump straight to the top of the Colossus without having to climb on it. So yeah, so experts who are familiar with the level design and will be able to, let's just say, cheese it through, yeah.
Sounds like a speed running trick.
So,
it is.
Sadly, it doesn't work for time attack because you need to start from the point where the Colossus fell and he gets revived from there.
Yeah, that kind of thing is turned off for time trials. Otherwise, it would break the time trial. So
obviously,
he must be inside there. Unless he is there, as in he's the stone wall just waiting to wake up.
Well, let's see. Uh-oh. Here's Colossi.
What do you know? We were on top of him.
Anyway, yeah, this is the second Colossi, Quadratus, the bull Colossus. It's called Taurus Major.
And I love that. This is my personal favorite Colossus boss battle theme. And yeah, it's called Revived Power.
Some other. I like this one too, but I like in general the soundtrack. But it's not on the top for me. But when we heard, I'll mention it. Oh yeah, another interesting touch. Before the Colossi actually notice you, their eyes are always blue.
And when I notice they become orange, yeah.
Become yellow. Yeah, the trick of this Colossus is essentially hit its legs, basically the palm of his hoof, with the arrows in order to destabilize him, and then allowing Wander to grab up. This is because...
Hold on, let him listen.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, there you go, when the theme becomes more triumphant and everything.
Yeah, this is my favorite track in the game. Like, basically, whenever you're climbing a Colossus, it changes into this triumphant theme. So yeah, remember what I said in the last part about the grip meter? This is an example of it, because in hard mode, this boss becomes way harder because it shakes you off a lot harder. So be sure to recover some grip meter in this platform before you go for that weak point there. There you go.
Also, you may have noticed for the different patterns of terrain there, but not all spots of a Colossi are climbable. Otherwise, it will probably really
only the parts of fur.
Yeah.
Because he grabs
So
into the fur.
again,
makes sense.
it accentuates the puzzle nature of the bosses, where you can get up or where you cannot, or how do you get up them. Armor intensifies that by having different weak spots here and there, but you're forced to get one by one because you cannot just use one of them.
Basically, my grip meter is almost up, so I'm going back to the platform
Yep.
before I fall.
I wonder, do these things pretty much go for the kill as soon as they see you?
Not well. It's interesting, Jova. Some of them do, some of them don't.
Depends on the
It was hard to
Colossus.
tell. It's like, well, as soon as this guy saw us, it looked like he was raising his fist to stomp
It
us.
emphasized the nature of the Colossi more as beasts than everything. Some of them simply don't care about you, and that's it. Others act in a more predatory way, like actual carnivorous animal, and actively try to even eat you at some point.
So, of course, the ones based off of cows, like the Minotaur and this guy, don't.
It's more passive. It just like tendentially the other cows. It attacks mostly in self-defense in this case. But as you can see, even when you're out to it, despite the only shaking difficulties because it's constantly moving. Otherwise, it doesn't shake as much as some of the later Colossi.
Yeah, I don't think I've explained that. But basically, whenever you're trying to climb, as long as you're holding R2 and you still have grip, you won't fall. However, like you saw there, for example, if it starts shaking you off, you won't be able to move well because he'll be trying his hardest to grab and not fall. So be careful when you're fighting a Colossus, because sometimes when they're being hurt, they'll stop trying to shake you off.
Yeah.
So
some of the later Colossi becomes very challenging.
Fortunately, this particular section of his butt it counts as solid ground, so I can recover stamina easily here.
Of course.
Alright, so unlike the previous Colossus, this one has 3 weak points. One in the side that I just took care of, this one, and then one in the head. We'll take care of the head last now.
How sad your existence must be for having a weak point on top of your butt.
Yeah, you'll have blood leaking out of it like nothing.
There you go.
This is quite an optimistic sounding boss theme.
It's again, it's used for wonder, not the Colossi itself. The major inspiration, if you've seen that movie I'm about to mention, takes inspiration from Lawrence of Arabia, which has these majestic ambiental corvettes used for the ambient and for the landscapes and everything. In here, instead, it's just used to emphasize Wander's determination in slaying these beasts.
Yeah, not just that. Like, if there's one thing Wade is great at, is the sense of scale in his games. I mean, you feel the size of these things.
Yeah. God of War later on will replicate that, but only, there is kind of a hint of that in 2, but it was still limited by the PS2 era, but 3 is where the massiveness starts to shine, because you see Kratos in all these massive environments that do replicate this feeling, but Shadow of the Colossus was practically the pioneer of this.
And the final blow.
If he stands still for a second, there you go.
Wow, that's gonna be a big order to give for McDonald's and their hamburgers.
Pure, genuine black smoke quality.
Smoky black coal burger or something.
I still think it will be more edible than 90% of McDonald's in America.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus, for wonder. Also, I love how Agro just stands there doing nothing.
At least they're kind enough to teleport the horse as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
As well. Another interesting Easter egg. As well. I don't know if Pedro shows it, but it's just even worth mentioning. In the original, both for the PS4 and both for the PS2 and the PS3 version, there was an interesting Easter egg that functioned using the import save data feature. In the remake, instead, I think it's just a simple unlockable. Basically, through that, in the original, if you have a save point, a save data from Eco,
yeah.
Agro, if you may have noticed, but Agro has a weird white spot on his forehead. That spot, if you have that save point, will be changed into the E, the letter I, the letter I of eco, which is shaped in a particular pointy way.
And here it's just a simple unlockable. Thy
Anyway,
next
go.
foe is a giant canopy soars to the heavens. The anger of the sleeping giant shatters the earth.
Oh boy, one of my kind of least favorite Colossi because of how tough it is. Especially, it's pretty much a difficulty spike because it's your first reality check. It's the first Colossi, and it's the first to actually remind you that things are going to get hard no matter what.
So he's the wake-up call boss.
Pretty much.
All right,
I mean,
then, let's
it's
go.
not as hard as the later Colossi, but it certainly raises, like, these first two Colossi were pretty much jokes at this point. The one we're about to meet is where things are take away the kiddy glows.
Yep. Especially if you're playing on hard mode like I am.
Yep. Oh, that's another interesting touch. Depending on the situation, you have a specific commands to call aggro, and Wonder tells it. But depending on the situation, Wonder will change his tone of voice in calling aggro. If it's the middle of content, it shouts it like there's no tomorrow. And depending also on the situation, there's the intensity of how he shot. It's an interesting little touch, but it's very welcome. It reflects the situation.
Not if you're even far away to the point where he can't hear you, he just whistles.
Yeah.
Alright, let's go then.
I also really appreciate this remake because Pedro mentioned it in the previous part with the emerald piece filter, radioactive filter, but thanks to the polishing and the remake, basically all the overworld being remade, there were a shit ton of details that only shines now even in this remake. Even the PS3 HD remaster did not allow them to shine properly. It was more polished than the PS2 version, and it had a consistent, stable frame rate, but some details were still missing, sadly, because of how the game was structured to begin with. This remake basically allows the game to be viewed full force.
We're gonna see this in the behind-the-scenes stuff in the extras part, but basically what they literally did is they took the original PS2 textures and models, and they based their new models and textures based on those, basically. Like,
it's pretty much
Because
like
that's what
what
killed the PS4.
it's pretty much what Vicarious Vision did for the Crash Insane trilogy. They remade the entire game on the ground up, but they still went as faithful as possible to the original.
in this
Makes sense.
in this particular one, it was even more than that, because even though the game itself is made from the ground up, and according to Marco Frosch, the studio president, this is how they always do their remasters, and now this remake as well. What they literally did is they took the actual programming code from the original PS2 disc and ported it to the PS4. So even though there were refinements like to Wonder's controls and stuff, the code that you're playing right now is the original PS2 code. As a result, the controls always feel natural to veterans, because you're literally playing a PS2 game with code-wise, but everything else was remade, like the actual textures and shit. So this is as faithful as you can be. Like it's literally the PS2 code, but they improved with refinements.
I have to give him credit. Even the Insane Trilogy didn't do that, because, okay, if there's one issue I do have with the Insane Trilogy, it's how, okay, the remake for, Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, that feels perfect. Here's the problem, though. They kept Crash's physics from Crash Bandicoot 3 for the other two games, and it really does mess people up on that, especially on Crash 1, where you only
I don't
have
think
one
they
jump.
even did that, honestly, particularly with the jump.
Well, that's the thing, sure. They didn't port all of his controls from Crash Bandicoot 3, but they kept his physics from Crash 3. Basically, sure. From Crash 2 on, and especially in Crash 3, Crash is kind of made physics-wise to, guide you to use the double jump more, because, let's be quite honest, his first jump in 3 is not the best, but that's okay, because
He's run away, Pedro.
I know.
Here's the problem, though. When trying to replicate that for Crash Bandicoot 1, though, people have been able to tell that the way Crash jumps in Crash Bandicoot 1 is notably different from how he did in the
Of course
original
it's
Crash
notably
1.
different. You fall backwards half the time.
Yeah, and that's because, his physics from 3 are the ones more kept, which, again, works for Crash Bandicoot 3,
It would.
but is
Not so
challenging
much
in
for
Crash
1.
Bandicoot 2 and a nightmare in Crash Bandicoot 1.
I'd be fine with it in 1 if we at least had the slide jump in 1, but we don't, so them's that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I agree.
Peter Dalton,
I-
Oh,
I-
there we
sorry.
go.
Like,
Okay.
I'm dying so often in that game to the point where I'm just getting angry at it.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, just like Dormin said, the next theater of the battle with the next Colossi will be these bizarre, strange architecture raising from the.
Well,
the
it wouldn't
lake.
be a way the game without bizarre architecture.
Oh boy,
Um,
Water. This is gonna make it tougher, I can tell.
Here's a
Being
little
in water is
here's a
already
little
a bad
tip for those who
sign.
don't know. If you swim underwater, you will actually go faster than in the surface of the water. So
That makes sense, actually. I found...
Basically, the game also is very ingenious in a sense that it uses
costs
the
grip
stamina
meter, though.
meter as
Yeah.
it uses stamina meter as your air meter as well. So we basically, instead of having another one from the get-go to have to worry about, it's also the same. And as far as I tried, at least, you don't actually drown.
Another
when
thing
it
that-
goes to
sorry.
when it goes to zero, Wonder just swims automatically to the surface.
that brings up another thing, Teo. Another thing that Blue Point improved a lot in the original game is the UI, because here's how the grip meter works. Whenever you increase your grip meter, it increases it keeps adding this line that comes from the sphere. Here's the problem: in the original PS2 and PS3 versions, the ball just increases in size. So if you go out of your way to get the maximum amount of stamina, the ball becomes really large and takes quite a good portion of the
It's
screen.
very intrusive, and it's not even very intuitive in a sense of understanding how much is left.
Fortunately, Blue Point fixed that, so that particular line that you see shooting from the ball, that's going to add.
Although I'm very
increase.
curious about the choice of color. In the original, it was just this pink, magenta. Here is yellow. I don't know.
It's for the sake of being very distinct color from the life bar, because the life bar was pink in the original, and the sphere was like purplish. So for the sake of having two distinct colors that cannot be
Oh,
confused,
boy.
that's my guess at least. So there you go. Here's the third Colossus.
Gaius, the giant.
Okay, when it's not the first boss, it's this guy that's shown up on, I forget
Yes.
if it's
Yes.
magazines
He
or
wasn't
covers
allowed-
of the
Yeah,
This is
it
the most
was in a lot of
iconic. Yeah,
promotion.
this is the most iconic Colossus from the game. Like it's probably the one that most people like when they first play the game. This is the one that makes the first really big impression on you when you fight it.
Yeah.
And guess what? His entire lower body is unclimbable, and his only interesting spot that you could try is arm, as basically a gigantic stone wrist that doesn't let you pass, not at least properly. So what you're supposed to do here? Well, Dormin kind of gave you an hint, in a sense of resonating, and this Colossi has a gigantic sword attached to his hand. So
wait
let's see
for
what he
him to
does.
try and hit you.
Yeah, but
I'm
you need to
guessing he's
stand
one of
up.
those more aggressive types.
Oh, definitely.
There you
go.
Clearly, Joe.
By standing on a specific spot, the resonation
It hit
when
the
he hits
it hit the
sword
resonation
there,
thing, yeah, and it
Yeah.
broke his wrist.
and yeah, allowing you to actually climb. So the next thing you need to do is to bait him for another attack and use the sword as a platform.
Be careful though, because if he hits you, like he'll take a lot of your life.
Yes.
Clearly.
And again, in hard mode, he's much more aggressive, so
Like
you need to watch out. Watch out also on the telegraphing of your attack, because a lot of times you may dodge when you see the animation, but he actually follows it, so dodge at the very last second.
Oh, another thing that I forgot to say: whenever you're fighting a Colossus, hold L2 to focus the camera on the Colossus itself. That way, you will never. That way, if like it's not that necessary for these first three that we just saw, but it's going to be very convenient for later Colossus.
So it's weird. I mean, despite not being the Colossus that shows up on the cover, why is this guy so popular to the point where I definitely have seen him in, a lot of magazines?
Trust me,
or-
Jova, you have to really get in the nitty-gritty and play this game to really realize why this Colossus is so memorable. Like,
Not just that,
especially
the first one where things-
especially if you're trying to get the golden trophy for break the wrist, where you have to try to climb without breaking his wrist, because it's actually possible, but it's insanely hard. Fortunately, since thanks to the PS4's refined controls, it's nowhere near as frustrating as in previous versions.
So I wonder, is it because he's like the first boss where things get challenging, or is it maybe something else?
Yes, it
is.
going on with
Yes, it is.
story?
Also,
You'll see.
also
Hold on.
my guess, Jova, is that is very marketing friendly, but it's my guess.
No, it's not that too. It's the primary fun that, unlike the previous two bosses, this one shakes and tries to shake us off a shit lot. Like, trust me, it becomes really hard, especially on hard mode, which is what I'm playing.
Especially on time attack. In the original game, you could use the lower frame rate actually to your advantage. But the PS3 remaster basically having a consistent frame rate made this boss in time attack actually very hard.
And unlike the last two, he seems a lot more humanoid.
Yeah.
I'm surprised the camera doesn't just follow them automatically.
So how do you tell a male
It's
Colossus from a female Colossus?
they have no gender. They're just the things.
Yeah. Sometimes we just have female names, but they're only for indicative purposes.
As for what you were saying, Shiroi, it's not so much that. Basically, if you want to just have the camera be normal and you can use the right analog stick to change it and all everything, then you can do that. However, if you want the camera to focus on the Colossus, that's only usually useful when you're not on top of it. When you're on top of it, you don't really need to use the focus camera on the Colossus button, honestly. Just to finish what I was saying, for me, it actually looks better, because look at it, it's two very distinct colors that you could not possibly mix up in the heat of the moment. So if you ask me, it's actually a much better color choice, if you ask me.
I'm guessing that they changed the colors because, like, well, I'm guessing that the pink for the original was to deal with, the current color scheme of that game and, so on and so forth with this one.
Yeah, it helps. It helps that the 2 meters have like red and yellow, two very distinct colors that are impossible to mistake in the heat of the moment. So it's so if you ask me, it's actually a better choice regardless. Even if it doesn't technically mind you, I still think it's like for the sake of those who might not be as well eyesighted as me and Teo. Anyway,
I think I can also understand you. It's like, well, when it comes to a landscape like this, pink is a color that is meant to be a faded version of red. However, here's the thing. This is a game that's using faded colors, so pink may accidentally blend in with some of the hints of white, gray, and some of the human skin here and there.
There you go. For context, I just posted in the chat a picture of the HUD as it was in the original.
Oh, yeah, okay. I definitely see why they changed the colors. Like, maybe for back then those colors would work, but for here, because of, the more upscaled resolution and coloring, it might have ended up blending in.
It also didn't help that, again, that stamina ball would get so large and obnoxious as you increase your stamina.
How large are we talking?
Basically, Joe, picture that ball, but 10 times bigger.
Yeah.
Really?
No joke. You can increase your stamina levels to the roof here.
And fortunately, in here it works much better because it will just be a bigger life bar, as it should have been.
It's similar in this approach, Joe. It's similar to the life.
All right.
HP
Notice
and
how
MP bar. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Notice how I was having a lot of trouble finishing that weak point on the head because it was shaking me off so much. Here's the real hard part. The arm. Remember, unlike with the head. In the head, I could just, like, if I'm in trouble on top of his head, I can just go back to his back and recover stamina. I can't do that while I'm on his arm, because it's way harder, so I would have to climb back up. So you can probably guess. And considering how much he tries to shake you off, it's a fucking trouble to try to stab that stupid weak point through hard mode. Yeah.
You know what this reminds me of? Egg King from Sonic Rush.
Does it have a similar approach?
Yeah, there's literally a part where you have to climb its arm, but also take cover whenever he tries to shake you off.
Huh.
He starts off fine enough, but on the later phases, he really, really gets tough with it.
Yeah, mana is the cost.
There's no real safe way to go about this. You have to take the risk and just try and hope that you manage to seclude. Here's a little tip for you. The way to when he starts shaking you off a shit ton and you like to the point where you can barely get a chance to stab him, that means you should probably move to a different section of the weak point, because there are certain sections of the weak points where it will not shake you off as much. The game doesn't tell you this. You're supposed to figure this out on your own as you play, which is why I recommend when you first play this game, play on easy mode. Like in the original versions, PS2 and PS3, you only had normal and hard mode. However, Bluepoint added in an extra easy mode that's much more convenient for newcomers. Normal and hard mode, however, are exactly like the previous version, so don't worry, veterans, you don't have to deal with easy mode if you don't want to.
Can you like pick whichever order you attack these weak points in?
Yes, you can.
At least, not for all of them. There's at least one specific Colossi that I remember that has weak spots that you have to tackle in a specific order. But otherwise, yes, you can do whatever you prefer.
So yeah, basically I decided to leave the arm for last because
Yeah.
You know, that makes me imagine now if you'd taken down the second boss and his final weak point you killed him with was his rear.
Potentially you can, Jova.
if you want, yes, you can do that.
Although the camera doesn't zoom in on the last weak spot, the animation of that on the
Alright,
Colossi stays the same.
If I remember correctly, I'm not gonna jump straight to the arm. I'm going to try to make my way back up again.
But yeah, Jova, basically when it comes to the HUD in this game, in this remake, it takes a similar approach to the HP or MP bar of the first Kingdom Hearts, where they get basically progressively longer without being too intrusive.
Makes sense. But that one, basically, they even make a half circle around the avatar.
Yeah, in this case it's only for the stamina one with the spear, which then protons into a straight line. The HP bar stays just a straight line.
Just to continue what I was saying earlier, Peter Dalton, the technical director at Bluepoint, he says in the behind-the-scenes stuff that when we port a game to a new system, what we first do is we take the original disc, we port the code, and we establish parity. Basically, they literally get the original PS2 game running on the modern system, literally, like, to the point. And basically establishing parity, to the point where you can literally be playing on the original system and on the modern one, and it will basically control the same, it would look the same, it will, you know, all that good stuff. And that's after they establish one-to-one parity, that's when they start changing the code to improve the controls, improve the visuals, whatever needs to be improved.
Basically, Jova, they're modders. They're basically officialized modders.
And that's why Bluepoint is the best of the best when it comes to these things, because they literally go out of their way to be as faithful as you can possibly be.
Yeah, and that quote about being on point, I guess that explains their name, Bluepoint.
Mm-hmm.
But they did not start it specifically for this. They worked for the most part with Sony because the first title that they did was a PlayStation Network only game.
Yes, Blast Factor. And after that, they got the chance of a lifetime because Santa Monica didn't have the time to remaster God of War 1 and 2 and at the same time make God of War free, so they needed to outsource the remasters to somebody else. But they didn't need to be done in a hurry because Sony really wanted the HD collection out before free came out. And Sony was like, oh, well, why don't you guys talk to those Bluepoint guys? Because they made Blast Factor for the PS3, like, in a hurry. Like, maybe they'll be good too. And Bluepoint took that chance, and they impressed so much with that collection that, well, they just went from there and basically became, as they're known right now, the masters of the remaster.
Which, again, in turns makes me really excited to see what we're gonna do in the future.
True, yeah, especially of how much of a success this remake was.
And how in
this remake actually, this remake actually, sorry, this remake actually sold better than the original release, which makes sense considering how.
It also helped with that better market.
Oh, now there's 3 mysterious shadows looking at us.
So there you go. You probably guess what the Shadow of the Colossus title comes from. All of those shadows are the actual souls of the Colossi we beat.
Let me guess, they used to be poor, innocent people, but got mutated into terrible monsters.
Well, remember, Jova, this is a way the game, so obviously some stuff are left for your interpretation.
Interpretation, yes.
Oh, so we won't get a clear answer about it.
Well, there are some clear answers, but not for everything.
This game, no, both Shadow of the Colossus and Last Guardian, despite having some stuff that's the biggest questions are answered in the best ways. It's the eco that suffers from the way too open to interpretation problem, because the fact that they cut off 75% of the script before release really damaged that game for me. But anyway, we can talk about that when I record eco.
It's like I said before, I'm okay with, some things being left up to interpretation, but it should not be to the point where you do one of those stupid what's inside the briefcase things. Like, that's just being pretentious, unless you're doing it for a joke.
I think Smeghead is the one that put it best. Like, open to interpretation is fine. However, when it gets to a point where I'm starting to feel like I deserve to be credited in the game as a screenwriter, we have a problem.
To me, it feels worse for a case like this because there are no other sources to understand this information. But it's not a situation where lore is relegated to Japanese exclusive novels or shit like
Anyway,
that.
notice.
The games
Hold
are
on,
the
Till. Let me
only
just show you
parts
this.
I got.
One thing
Yeah,
you'll
yeah,
notice
yeah.
over the course of the game. Notice Wander's neck.
Uh-huh.
Basically, I'm showing you off how he looks and shit because let's just say if you play this game long enough, you notice certain details. You'll probably start noticing some of that is going on throughout the game. But for now, that's Wander. Just keep that image in mind for later.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah,
Okay.
but basically, yeah, to me, that's what the biggest sin is of the lack of lore. The fact that the games are the only real source where you can get informations, and well, some of them don't tell you that much. So that's why I'm also hoping Weda will continue to tell more about this world that he has built with these 3 games.
Another
We'll
thing,
see.
another thing that I did forget to mention is that Bluepoint also brought back Ko Itani to re-record the soundtrack with an actual orchestra this time. So, and they did a great job in reorchestrating so that it still sounds basically like it just sounds like exactly like the PS2 tracks, just enhanced by the fact that now it's actually played with an actual real orchestra. So even that particular part of the game was brought to modern standards. Anyway, see you for the next part, everybody, where we continue to defeat more Colossi. See ya.
See ya.
See you then.
See ya.